It is showtime at the Anaheim Convention Center, where over 60 helicopters are on display inside at Heli-Expo 2024. And to kickstart those helicopter rotor blades is the breaking news announcement after a 75-year history to rebrand the Helicopter Association International to now being Vertical Aviation International. Vertical Aviation International is representative of the forever evolving expansiveness of the vertical aviation universe beyond its core world of helicopters to include categories such as eVTOL aircraft, unmanned aerial vehicles, otherwise known as drones, and various other vertical flight technologies. I recently sat down with James Viola, the president and CEO of Vertical Aviation International, Gregory Brown, their Director of Education and Training Services, and Bailey Wood from Vertical Aviation International Strategic Communications to talk about Heli-Expo and dig down deep into the details of the state of the vertical aviation industry, but most importantly, for all things aviation and aerospace, the plethora of vertical aviation career opportunities and possibilities in the vertical aviation industry. Here is our conversation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens with the Private Air Media Group. As many of you know, I launched this show back in 2020 to inspire, encourage, and inform aspiring young aviation professionals by letting them know about the wide variety of opportunities and the plethora of possibilities in aviation and aerospace industries. Not a day goes by that I haven't had a conversation about how whatever your skill set is, it is applicable in aviation and aerospace. And yes, that includes what we talk about the most, becoming a professional pilot, an airframe and power plant mechanic or technician, an engineer, etc. It's also one of the greatest times to be in this industry. Seek out opportunities to get into the industry and to explore every possibility that you can think of. I mean, it's an endless spectrum of possibilities and availability in the industry. Speaking of which, today I'm extremely excited and very privileged about my guest lineup. We're going to give you a detailed preview and overview of the Helicopter Association International's upcoming Heli-Expo, which is taking place in the sunny, hopefully, Anaheim, California in just a few weeks during the last week of February, beginning on the 26th. Now, to put it in perspective, this helicopter exposition is the largest in the world. It will have over 14,000 industry professionals attending from over 90 countries, 97 at last count. And there will be 600 plus exhibitors representing every aspect of the helicopter industry and then some. Not to mention hundreds of education sessions, workshops, forums, topped off with really cool demonstrations. Like my kids would say, cool, Dad, you mean fire? But really cool demonstrations of equipment. And one of the most exciting parts for me is the over 40 helicopters that will be on display inside the convention center. That's always cool to me, is how they get those helicopters inside and have so many of them to be able to look at. Now, it's no secret, even though I've flown fixed-wing aircraft since high school, that I've always had a passion for helicopters and have even taken helicopter flying lessons and had the privilege of spending some unofficial time in the co-pilot seat of some pretty cool whirlybirds. Let's go ahead and move forward, and I'll introduce my guests. I have a distinguished panel of leadership from HAI, and we'll start with my friend and industry colleague, who also happens to be the president and CEO of HAI, aka the Helicopter Association International, which is headquartered right across the Potomac from Washington, D.C. and Alexandria, Virginia. Meet James Viola. James cut his teeth flying helicopters in the Army. He has over 35 years of experience in the aviation industry, and he is an airline transport rated pilot, better known as an ATP, for both helicopters and airplanes. Yep, he's my hero. James, welcome back to All Things Aviation and Aerospace.
No, thanks, Vince. It's always great to join in.
Also with us is meeting him actually for the first time today, feeling like we've known each other for a while, Bailey Wood. Bailey is the Director of Strategic Communications for HAI. He is a communications and public relations veteran, registered lobbyist. He worked on Capitol Hill, and he has had various leadership roles in the transportation industry. Bailey, very glad to have you on with us today.
Thrilled to be here, Vince. Thanks for having us.
Coming full circle to my friend and colleague, Gregory Brown. Greg is an experienced leader in education with a long and storied history in the aviation industry, including the airline industry. Greg has a master's in aviation management and operations. He from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He also was a Marine pilot, helicopter pilot, which I just found out. I did not know that. So he has a background in both the Marines and with the Navy. And he currently is a commercially rated helicopter pilot as well as a certified flight instructor. So I was telling these guys that I one day I hope to get my ad on, and they said, well, you know where you can find a couple of instructors. So I had to totally agree with that. So it's great to have all of you back on, particularly you, Jim, and Greg, since you've been on before. And of course, to have you with us, Bailey, joining us today. And I'm looking forward to this conversation of us talking about everything that has to do with this really great show that I always enjoy going to every year, and thought it would be a great idea for us to really let everybody know what the Heli-Expo is all about. But before I do that, you know, you guys last year, you just celebrated 75 years as an association. That's quite the milestone. And I thought maybe we could start out with you, Jim, and just kind of talk about that for a minute and tell us a little bit about the history of the organization and what HAI does and why it exists.
No, absolutely. I really appreciate it, Vince. Yeah, 75 years was in December, and we're kind of closing that out with, on the first night of Heli-Expo, which will be the 26th of February, Monday night. We're going to be kind of the celebration of, hey, we completed 75 years. And the thing that's really important this year is that Anaheim is really where the association started 75 years ago. So it's been great to come back to Anaheim for this event, and some of the great people that helped make it last 75 years. You know, if you talk about the original folks of Igor Sikorsky, and then you got Eleanor Rodnick, who was one of our first female presidents back in 1955. So we always were stirring things up with our rotor heads, and then Ellen Halverson, who you know, when you look at all the different things, we got 40 some missions that helicopters do and have evolved to doing that can't be done by another aviation thing out there. The helicopters have really been able to, you know, as you look at the Grand Canyon and all that stuff, and that's where Halverson, if you read one of his books where he talks about the whole deal of getting in there and making some of the things that they're still doing, tour operations in the area to show people that beautiful area in the Grand Canyon area. So 75 years of just growing, and you know, it's about learning, about growing, about connecting folks and helping businesses succeed. And so those are the things we still are core values for HAI, and we really are excited as we expand, you know, with the additional vehicles that are coming into the community outside of helicopters. And we're still trying to figure out, you know, if you watch some of the things going on with EV tolls and different types of power plants now coming into helicopters as well, to make sure that, you know, what is it that helicopters do? And I'm already getting excited just talking about them. But yeah, as you said, what is it helicopters do for society, and how do we help that as an aviator? You know, you talked about Greg being in the Marines. I did Army time myself, and it's like, you know, we bring a capability to the air. We get that third dimension involved, and we really want to get involved for the good of society. You talked about how exciting you were about getting, you know, seeing 40 aircraft inside the building. Well, this year, right now, the number is 56. So we got 56 vehicles inside that you can walk around, touch, sit in. So that's another reason to make sure if anybody's listening and they don't have their ticket yet for Anaheim, you need to get on board.
Absolutely. No, that's exciting. Of course, we in the industry, we're always excited about this stuff. That's kind of the nature of working in the industry, being pilots, et cetera, and so forth. But that being said, you know, it's interesting. I sent out the invite for people to watch this show or to pick it up later on demand. And I actually put a couple of people in it that have nothing to do with the industry. And so I had to send them a note and say, hey, sorry, I don't know how you got on my mass mailing list. And they said, oh, no, that's okay. That sounds really cool. That sounds exciting. And I was like, here's people not in the industry that are just as excited as we are about it. One of the things that kind of makes me want to think of and talk about for a minute is what you just mentioned, Jim, the various aspects of helicopter usage, what helicopters are used for. And, I noticed that you guys had in your special edition of Rotor Magazine that you had I think you said 40 different applications for the aircraft. And I was thinking, wow, really? I pretty much know a lot about the industry, but there were a few that I hadn't thought about in terms of some of the things. So you know about things like medevac, and you know about taking the guys out to oil rigs and those type of things, the air ambulance. You might even know about them flying over and checking power lines and things like that, maybe agricultural use. But let's just talk about that from all of you for a minute. Some of the uses of course, the military usage, and just some of the usage of the aircraft that we kind of don't even think about every day.
Well, the ones I'll start with, I mean, harbor pilot transfer. People don't think about that big ship coming into port and, trying to get the person that's familiar with that specific port. A lot of it's up in Alaska, some other ports where you're going to put the pilot that brings that big ship in. So, you're going to get them there by helicopter. How else would you get them there? Of course, flight training, fishery support. And then, you can't let go that we did over 70 missions on Mars, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So come on.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Jim. That was a smooth one. Yeah. A helicopter on Mars. Yeah, that kind of takes it to a whole nother level. And it was successful. In fact, it lasted a couple of years longer than they expected.
So they expected it. They expected it to fly 6 total missions. From
right.
Ingenuity is the name of the helicopter. It's only supposed to do 6 missions. That's all they had planned. It survived for 56 missions, which is pretty incredible for a craft this thing. And you also have to realize that the Martian air is so much thinner. So these helicopter blades had to spin much, much faster than you would here on Earth for it to take off. And it did some incredible things. Saw some great pictures from it. We're so proud of everything that NASA did and JPL did to bring a vertical aircraft to another planet.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned that because it really says a lot about technology. I saw some of the video of when they were testing it in one of the wind tunnels here, and the issues that they were having with it from the very beginning. But they figured it out. And then the other thing that people know, and I don't want to get in too much in the weeds about it, but they don't think about, but transporting a delicate helicopter like that all the way to Mars without causing any damage, and for it to work when it gets there, it was pretty substantial. But coming back home, the other thing I was going to mention is one of the things you mentioned. You talked about eVTOL, which is moving into the rotary wing market. Most people, if they're outside of this industry, they don't know what eVTOL is. So I just say air taxi. And then they go, oh, that. So, but that is becoming a big factor, as well as, of course, the unmanned aerial vehicles. So I'll let you guys chat about that for a sec.
Yeah, sure. So the eVTOLs and as you look at the different ones that are out there, and of course, HAI as an association, we want to make sure that we open our arms and we make sure that these future vertical aircraft capable, and when I say vertical aircraft capable, I'm looking at aircraft that kind of operate below 2,000 feet, probably don't go more than 200 knots, and they don't need all the infrastructure of an airplane, essentially. While they always say that 1 mile of runway will get you anywhere, well, a helicopter or some of these vertical capable aircraft can go out and support society, just as you talked about with the air ambulance. If there's an accident on the side of the road, we can get in there. We don't need all that infrastructure. Of course, the more infrastructure you'll see, the big discussions are for safety, to make sure that you have an area blocked off to be able to do that vertical capability, bring them to a hospital, have a nice helipad at the hospital, so you don't have to worry about some of the safety issues around there with having full control of where the landing area is. So there's some of that stuff that gets worked through all the time. But we've already have some helicopters now that have been operated electric, with a battery operated. You got hydrogen testing that's going on now. So really, when you replace the power plant of a helicopter and or these new vehicles that are electric and or maybe hydraulic or different types of power plants of the future, we want to make sure that infrastructure, that while it's not required like an airplane, with the big infrastructure, that we still have the infrastructure capable for the power plant that's actually providing that power to the vertical. Do you want to call them rotor blades? Do you want to call them propellers? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now, and I think I'm trying to figure out as an industry lead, how do we help the governments, globally, essentially, come up with proper nomenclature for what we're actually talking about. I mean, that's one of the things when I went to New York at the Manhattan heliport, and I saw Volocopter was there with Joby, and the mayor called it an electric helicopter. And then you can see some Archer stuff, right? And Archer was trying to figure out, well, I don't want to call it an eVTOL because it's too hard to say. So what are we actually going to call it? An AM vehicle, an air taxi? So we really should we are trying to help. And one of the things we do to try to help there, and we do that in multiple areas, is that we put together an AAM, Advanced Air Mobility Industry Advisory Council, where we brought all of those new players together. And then we actually helped put a roadmap out that kind of, these 192 countries around the world will start with HAI's roadmap, where we actually tried to help you read through it and see what the government can do and get on board with the nomenclature and what would be successful for them to come into your part of the world and help your society in your part of the world. Of course, lots of work we do with India. There's some really countries out there that can benefit from vertical aviation of the future here. And I mean, you can get me going.
There are some benefiting from it now. They'll just benefit from it even more. That brings us to the Heli-Expo and all of the things that you guys are talking about. The great thing about the Heli-Expo is all of that will be there, and there'll be plenty to look at, to talk about, to learn about. And speaking of the learning stuff, I'm gonna go to you, Greg, because this is one of your areas of expertise. And in terms of learning, I think all of us in this industry, that's one of the things I know I like about it. You're always learning something. You're learning something new. There's just always something out there for you to learn more information about and things like that. And that's one of the big factors and one of the things that takes place at Heli-Expo is all of these education sessions and forums and workshops and, the things that I mentioned before. You guys have hundreds of those going on over a, 4-day period or thereabouts. And
Absolutely.
I think absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. We have, professional education classes that we have starting the Friday before Heli-Expo week. And so, we have classes from a half a day to 3 days in duration. And we cover the full gamut of different courses that we teach. And one of the things that we always try to do is when we get from industry is making sure we're answering or addressing a pain point of the industry and providing that quality education that they need to move forward with their careers. So,
yeah, so just Greg, for a second there, and Vince, that's one of the things that, as you mentioned, the 4 days, a lot of people are familiar with the big show days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But as Greg mentioned, on Friday, prior to the show, we actually reach out and, what are the gaps and what are the education that industry members need? And then that's what Greg lines up, and it starts as early as Friday.
And we have a lot of different courses that cover a lot of different things within the industry. And we know that the members are looking for and the attendees are looking for. So we make sure we're covered from safety to maintenance, to pilot information, to everything that we cover that we can get training for the individuals. Then we move forward to the show days where we have what we call a rotor safety challenge. These are what I call a little 1-hour vignettes, little nuggets that we have presenters give to the attendees that, but not a full-blown class, but some little things that they can take back with them to their offices, their shops, to their organization that they can say, hey, I learned something about this. Let me try to find some more information on it. And these are, go from all the safety aspect of that. And we're expanding a little bit more too. We're looking at how can we help the small operators, small businesses in their endeavor in building their businesses. So we're looking to add some programs to that. And then the last one in thinking about our maintenance is our manufacturers technical briefings. And so what we have is the OEMs and some other suppliers, again, provide a little 1 hour information on their specific products. And these majority of these qualify for what we call inspection authorization or IA renewal credits. And so the attendees come, they each get a 1 hour credit based on the class they attend. And then they get some really up close information and up to date information from the OEM and suppliers who are making some of the equipment. Forgot to mention that with the Rotor Safety Challenge too, you do have the opportunity, about 80 to 85% of the presentations qualify for the FAA wings credit, or some qualify for the FAA AMT credits as well. So we make sure that when you do come and you attend one of these presentations, you're getting some credits associated with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like to accomplish with this show and wanted to really do also in reference to the expo is talk about how inspiring it is to young people that are interested in the industry. I think it's a great place to go to, like a lot of these association events that are conventions, or in your case, an exposition, that have everything related to the industry. I mean, there's nothing that's not there that has to do with the helicopter industry, and maybe a little extra. So, and I think that's very inspiring for young people, or even for somebody. When I say young, we always think of like middle, high school, college, but even people that are just getting started in the industry and maybe trying to figure out where they want to go career-wise. This is a great show to come to and get a good feel for that. Can you guys talk about that for a bit?
Sure. That's very, very important to us. And Jim has been stressing that we've got to get and reach out to the young people. So on Thursdays at Heli-Expo Day, what we've gone out and have done, that we brought in high school students from the local high schools into Heli-Expo and have them tour the show floor and meet and greet some of the OEMs there. This year, we're looking to have over 150 students from 3 high schools within the local area in Anaheim come in and really walk the floor, talk about careers in aviation, specifically vertical lift aviation. And as you mentioned, Vince, this is a great time to come into this industry because of the workforce shortage. And we are looking at that in building that pipeline. So we have to start with getting kids to understand there are opportunities available for them. No matter where you come from, there's great opportunities available for you.
No matter what your skill set is.
Absolutely. No matter what your skill set is, there's opportunities available for you. You have to take advantage of it. And then the other thing that we do is we have on Tuesday of the show day, we have a career fair. And so this year we'll have approximately 30 companies that will be exhibiting at a career fair. And then we'll also have a program set up for the attendees to kind of get some information on, hey, how do you set up and write your resume? Because the aviation resume is a little bit different than the regular resume you go to. How to network, and that's the key. How do you network?
That's a number one point there.
Absolutely. And then the other part of it is we have 2 personnel from the industries, offshore and tours, that talk about, for lack of a better term, a day in the life. What's the tour operation like? How do you get into that industry? And so we'll have all that available. And one thing we'll also have available, we'll have folks available to look at your resume and give you some insight on how to make it better. And we'll have opportunities for you to print off a copy and get some copies made in the local area, so you can come back with an updated resume and talk to the companies that are there at exhibiting at the career fair. And lastly, the Monday before, so much things happening, we have what we call a military to civilian transition forum. And in this forum,
that's really important too.
We talk to military members who are thinking about transition, in the process of transitioning, or have transitioned, about what they need to do to be competitive in the vertical lift industry. So we have members who have done the transition, give briefings about what the process is about. And then we also have what we call mentors, prior military members who are now working in the industry, available for those members to go up and talk to and talk about their careers in their different sectors. So
Yeah,
lots of things we have going out there.
I think that's great that you guys are doing that because the transition from military to civilian may sound easy, but it isn't always because the military has its regimen of the way it does things, and then the civilian world is just a whole different ball game. So that's cool that you guys have that. Kind of a double-edged sword too, though, that because military flying, as you guys would agree with me wholeheartedly, is a great way to start your career. And the reason I call it a double-edged sword is because the military is in desperate need of pilots, but then so is the civilian side of things. So, it's kind of how do you take care, how do you help both in that regard and that type of thing? I'm glad you guys are talking about workforce too. As you mentioned, I brought it up at the very beginning. It is top of mind right now. It is from the standpoint of being a challenge to the fact that it's really something that's offering a lot of opportunity for people that want to get in the industry. So the challenge is getting them in and getting them started in the particular areas. You guys can probably talk more about that than I can. Although I've been in private aviation a long time, I went to the AOPA Business Aviation, NBAA's business aviation thing. And I got to tell you guys, I hope you're ready in Anaheim because in AOPA, the opening session, which talked about careers and workforce, and the closing session, which also talked about careers and workforce, were standing room only. Everybody, industry people as well as young people that were there from colleges and high schools, that was their focus. They wanted to hear, okay, so what do I need to know? And I know I'm kind of running through some things, but one of the other things that you brought up, Greg, is the networking. Talk about this as often as I can on just about every show, because for whatever reason, a lot of kids are shy about it, and they don't realize a couple of things that I always like to repeat. We love to talk about our industry. Just ask us one question and you'll get a 20-minute answer. So it's pretty much guaranteed. But unfortunately, a lot of kids are kind of shy about it. They hesitate to go up and just ask somebody that is obviously a pilot or a professional in the industry, what they do and how they get there and things like that. And I think that that's something that needs to continue to be focused on to help people move forward.
With the focus, like you said here with Heli-Expo and the opportunities to do networking, even when I had some mil to civ, basically, I had some buddies that were leaving the military. And they came to the show and they were, eyes wide open of all the stuff that were there and all the people, and they would meet them. I'd introduce them to folks and they'd be, okay, good meeting, start walking away. I'd be like, stop, give them your card, give them your contact information. So it's not the younger group, it's everybody that I think they're overly impressed with. There's so much stuff going on that they think they're asking too much to be mentored and or to do that connection. And we love it and we want more coming in. So workforce development is very important. We just stood up a working group, for workforce development so that everybody out there in the industry doesn't need to solve it themselves. Let us, as an association, try to bring you in as the experts. What are you doing? What's working? And then let's, again, spread best practices so we can all help. And I'm not sure, Greg, if you have the dates of when that meeting is, but there's stuff like that, working groups that will be meeting during Heli-Expo that will be open to folks coming in that are interested in the topics. And the two topics for us, the biggies for industry right now, are workforce development and insurance working group. I mean, people, need some help of what can we do all together to help with the insurance costs that are really, saddling some people pretty good.
Jim brings up a very good, I'm sorry, Greg. Jim brings up a very good point that no matter where you are in your career, an event like Heli-Expo is incredibly beneficial to do networking. Whether you're a young man or woman coming into the industry or you've been around the block a few times, the more people you meet, the better it is. The more people you connect with, as you alluded to earlier, Vince, the better long-term your career. Even if you're in the twilight of your career, a connection with somebody can make the difference in their lives. It can better your business. So networking is incredibly important. Greg, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, if I and one of the things also to add, Vince, is we've invited, again, not just the high schools, but the local universities and AMT schools that are in the local area and said, come on in. Even if you're not ready to graduate, say a year, come and meet the people in the industry, put a face to a name, so to speak, and start learning how to talk and relate to the HR personnel, people in the industry, so they know who you are. So when you are ready to make that application or get your resume, it's not a foreign name. You'll be amazed how well they remember your name and go, yeah, I remember talking to this young man or young lady at Heli-Expo last year, and they're ready to come and do that. So it's very, very important to, even if you're not ready, to come and experience it, because again, you're going to meet different people from different segments, and you never know who you'll meet will be helping you within a year or so to do that. So always, always do that.
Not to overstate it, but 600 exhibitors. The 50, how many? 56, 57
So
helicopters
631 exhibitors, and we have 57 aircraft.
and 57 aircraft. Just being in that, I'm piggybacking off of you, Greg, just being in that environment and being around that and being around the professionals in the industry. If you've never had anything to do with the industry, it's still something to behold and to, quite frankly, take advantage of if you're trying to figure things out again and trying to figure out where you want to go and what you want to do. While we're talking about career paths, I want to stop down for a second and have you guys tell a little bit about yours, because all three of you have very interesting paths in terms of what you've done to get where you are now. And I'm gonna let you lead it off, Jim.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, no, I started my career with the Army. I did some ground school with airplanes prior to when I was still in college, but always wanted to fly. Went to the Army, started to fly, and thought, well, I'd do the minimum time in the Army and get out. And then I went from helicopters to airplanes, and then I ended up just flying a lot, getting into special operations, and the Army kept me there for 27 years. But I got all my CFI ratings on the civilian side with airplanes and rotorcraft. And then look for the day that I was going to get out and, hopefully be a designated pilot examiner was my dream. Instead, I got, things worked out where I became an ASI, an Aviation Safety Inspector Operations in 2008 with the FAA, and then did 11 and a half years with the FAA. So I've just been very lucky and really glad of my aviation background right now. I got an R-44 that I fly as often as I can, and I got a Grumman Tiger that I fly. I don't know if I need to fly an airplane. If I want to go get in line for takeoff, I'll fly the airplane.
Hey, don't say it like that. If I need to fly an airplane, but I fly my R-44 all the time. No, I'm just kidding. Why helicopters? When did you decide, when you were first looking at flying, you had taken ground school, when did helicopters come into the picture and how?
Well, again, as originally enlisted into the Army, and then I was like, okay, I do always want to fly. And then the Army has had, everybody goes through the Army flight school. A lot of the folks did early back in the 80s. And so being able to, again, take off and land anywhere, be able to do the stuff. I mean, everybody knows Apocalypse Now. I mean, one of the famous helicopter movies. I mean, if that doesn't excite you, nothing does. And so I think being able to, again, that's still what I love to do. Is I want to go someplace other than an airport. So like I said, I do fly the airplane, but helicopters and all the different things they can do, as we talked about earlier, over 40 some missions. I mean, heli skiing is another one, people don't really think about it, but it's something that gets done and people enjoy that opportunity. The tours, the ability to go in and string all those power lines and stuff that you talked about without damaging the environment. And that's
Right.
where it's really tough balance with the EPA, because we do so much good work with them, because we can go in into the middle and not leave any footprints, and we can get something done. We can save a life. So it's such, the stuff
Search
that
and
we do for
rescue,
advocacy.
firefighting, all the above.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really it's a I don't know if I want to use the term tool, but that's the biggest thing is that as we talk about all the different things it can do out there and these additional vehicles that are coming, there was at one point when the new entrants were trying to say we're going to replace helicopters. I don't think anybody's using those terms anymore, because if you look at the helicopter that Greg flew with the MH-53 Echo, and I flew Chinooks. I mean, those powered helicopters and all the work that they do aren't going to be replaced. These new vehicles that are coming are going to add another capability to come to the community and rural
Another
communities.
segment.
Yeah, they're absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do as the association lead, is to say, hey, these people that have operated successful helicopter operations, let's put our arms around these guys. Let's help them succeed in the lower environment. Let's help them integrate. We all talk about integrated airspace. We don't want you go there, I go here, airplanes got that and that. Let's work together and figure it out. We're all smart enough. We put a helicopter on the moon. We can share some airspace on the earth.
Yeah, and speaking of that, not the moon, but of sharing airspace, that's a big challenge now that the FAA is actively working on as to how to make that integration work with all of these different types between the UAVs, the eVTOLs, aircraft, commercial aircraft, private aircraft, and also the helicopter industry and all of the variants of that, particularly in some of the major metropolitan areas, et cetera, and so forth. And, the UAVs are going to be used to drop something, a package or whatever at somebody's door. But the other side of it is those type of aircraft are unmanned aerial vehicles can get into spaces and areas that no one else can. So they can drop medicine out in a remote area where somebody may very badly need it and things like that. And so I do see what you're saying, Jim. I see it all working together and very effectively. Greg,
Yeah.
what made you say, I want to fly helicopters in the Marines? How did that come about?
So in college, like everybody else, I wanted to fly jets. My favorite airplane was the F-4 Phantom. I loved that airplane, and it was my favorite. And so the last year in college, we had an alumni from our university who was an instructor in Pensacola, he flew three TH-57 trainers to help out and just kind of give a rise to the ROTC students. I wasn't an ROTC student, but I knew a lot of friends within the organization. So they asked me to come down and watch them. And then he had one more flight to give. And the guy said, hey, why don't you go? I said, nah, I don't want to fly helicopters. I want to fly jets. He goes, yeah, that's fine. But just come on in and, we'll go for a flight. No big deal. I said, okay. So I got into 57 and we started to fly. And then he gave me the controls and they would drop down over the river down in Oklahoma. And the bait was set and they just pulled it. And it was, by the time we landed, I knew that, jets and airplanes are gone. I'm going to helicopters.
Going to helicopter all the way.
Yeah.
And then how did you progress from there with that? Jim was talking about the helicopter that he knows that you flew. Tell us about that helicopter for people that don't know much about helicopters. What type of a helicopter was it? What was it used for? What kind of missions did you do?
It was a transport helicopter, and I started out in the CH-53. It's a D model, and it was a two-engine version of the D model. And it was mostly troop transport we did, but also a lot of cargo and transporting there. The Echo model is a much robust helicopter. It's got three engines, a seventh rotor blade because the D had six, the Echo had seven, and the lifting power of that helicopter was great. You could lift two Humvees, you can lift a 198 howitzer, you could lift a lot of different things with that. And so it gave the Marine Corps a lot more capability. And also with the Echo, it had the refueling capability also. So you can do aerial refueling with that helicopter. So it's a very versatile helicopter. And it gave a lot of capability to the Marine Corps. And it's, the analogy was used with the 53D, it's like a sports car. And it's really sporty. You can do that. The Echo, it's a little bit more of, like a Cadillac, very smooth helicopter, very easy to fly, really, really nice. So I had a great time flying both of them. I love them both. Don't ask me to pick one because I will not. I think they both have their goods in, things, but I love them both. And I really, truly enjoyed flying when I had the opportunity to do that. So I was blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah. So how did all of this transition to you getting into education while you were in the service and then eventually doing it now for HAI?
Sure. When I left my last flying unit, I transitioned to Quantico, Virginia, for Training and Education Command, and I was in the formal schools training branch that looked at all the formal schools that the Marine Corps has gone to with the different services, and looked at the training, the curriculum, make sure all the seats are there. And so I did that for a few years prior to my retirement from the Marine Corps. And so with that, I transitioned to Harris Corporation and did some more within the training arena. And then I saw the opportunity with HAI come up, and I knew I wanted to get back within the aviation sector. So I was fortunate enough to apply and be accepted to join the team.
Yeah, I bring it up, and I'm going to go to you, Bailey, on this. I bring it up because what I try to tell young people is that we never know what our path is going to be. We can think we know, we can have an idea of what we wanted. You just said you wanted to fly jets. You were enthralled with the F4 Phantom, and then you went up. I don't know where I cut off, but I was basically saying that we all get excited about or think about what we want to do or where we think we're going to go and the type of path we're going to take. And a lot of times it ends up different. So as I mentioned earlier, what you were saying, Greg, you were interested in the F4 Phantom and you ended up in helicopters. And we all have, I never thought I would be in the advocacy side of aviation because I had a broadcasting career for decades. And then here I am, So, Bailey, how about you?
So I remember I was an 8-year-old boy. I was at Capital City Airport just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And my mother was getting her private pilot's license. She had just come down from her IFR rating, gave us a thumbs up, and we were all excited about that. And there was a maintenance technician who said, to my mother, I've got to take this helicopter out to the end of the runway and test it a little bit. Would your son like to join you? And I'm like, I hopped in that helicopter faster than he could say, "Would you like to join us?" And flew around if we got 10 feet off the ground, I would have been stunned. But, that started a lifelong passion with aviation and transportation. Like I said, I grew up around there, around Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and came to Washington, focusing on transportation policy, staff member in Congress, USDOT, worked for several other transportation associations, but my goal all along had always been to get into aviation, and this is where I've been trying to direct my career. And as you said earlier, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And my plan was a little bit more direct, but I got to where I needed to be eventually. And it's been a great opportunity to be here, and really excited about the opportunities. Really excited. This is going to be my first Heli-Expo, so I'm excited to see, as you alluded to earlier, all the aircraft. And one of the things I'm particularly excited for at Heli-Expo is the fly-in. I was over in Madrid for European rotors. I got to see a half a dozen aircraft fly in, but they were of nominal size, shall we say. I'm really excited to see the helicopter that Jim flew, the Chinook. I think we have one or two of those coming in. One that just got a brand new paint job, which we saw the other day. Looks gorgeous. But so looking forward to that. So it was a little bit of a circuitous route to get to my aviation world, but I'm here and I'm thrilled I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I remember correctly, you actually studied political science in school.
Yes. I tell every student that I've ever heard who is interested in a political science degree is the only thing they teach is how to argue with everybody. So it's good in some instances, but yeah, Syracuse was a great experience for me.
Well, I was bringing it up because one of the things I like to point out. I've done a couple other shows about flying helicopters, and I had some military pilots on, and this one was about female helicopter pilots in particular. And one of them was what was it? History major. Another one was an English lit major, and these are badass helicopter pilots, and I was thinking, yeah, so, you can major in or study whatever, or think you're going in one direction. I've had my kids do that exact thing, and then end up going in a completely different one. So, and hey, I am totally with you about the fly-in. I think that's one of the fly-in and the fly-out. That's probably one of my favorite parts of the show besides everything else in the show. One of the things that's really important, and I want to talk about this for a minute, is the associations like an HAI, Helicopter Association International, are key to an industry. And in this case, key to the helicopter industry, because without the advocacy that those that this organization does, a lot of things might fall through the cracks or maybe not even happen in a favorable way for the industry. So I think it's really key. And I think having something like the annual event that brings everybody together from all over the world, puts everything on display that has to do with the industry and things like that is really, really special and really a significant factor with this show, with the industry. One of the things I wanted to touch on, if we could, is talk about membership and the different types of membership that you can have with HAI. A lot of people, when they think of an association, they think, oh, you've got to be a pilot or you've got to be, a manufacturer or something like that to be a member. And you guys actually have a number of different ways that you can be a member of Helicopter Association International. So you want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure, I'm glad to do that. And one of the things is that, as you talked about, for industry to come together to this event, really like regulators around the world to come to this event as well, to learn as much as they can about the vertical aviation industry so that, as they go back home and they try to figure out what's going on in New Zealand, what's going on in Australia, what's going on in the other parts of the world, other regions, this is an opportunity to be cost effective and come to one large meeting where you have the manufacturers, the suppliers, the creators of what do you need in your helicopter? What is the mission you're trying to do? And how can I create something for you to do it with that vehicle that you own? So, I mean, the ingenuity that you'll see on the floor with those 631 exhibitors is outstanding. And so then we come to who can be a member. Well, basically anybody can be a member. And it starts off with, we do have students, we do have industry professionals. So industry professional is the one, it's basically, I'll call it a catch-all. If you somehow are interested in this community, you ought to be a member. It's the lowest rate, and it's, you can get up to date on it. We're again talking about workforce development. Well, I ran into one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet on workforce development is those that do additional careers. And so I ran into some folks out in New York that were changing industries. And when they open the door and they start getting rotor daily, they're like, oh my God, you do such a great job communicating to who? Ourselves. But how do we communicate? And that's why we brought Bailey on board here, strategic communications, because we need to communicate to those that aren't in our little sphere right now. And we really need to break open,
Absolutely.
all the good things we're doing. Yeah. So I really enjoy this opportunity, Vince, to talk to you to help us. We're still aviation. So imagine I'm vertical, you're aviation, but we got to get outside to society and all this good stuff that we can do when people realize the capability of vertical aviation. So anyway, so industry professionals, and then we get into the pilots, mechanics, engineers, you get into the manufacturers, you get into helicopter operators, and the operators are bread and butter. This association was formed 75 years ago by operators, and currently still today, our governance says that the board of directors for HAI are all operators. So as part of our annual expo, we'll have elections that occur on the first day. And then that's how our board members get elected. We have 9 board members that serve a 3-year term. So, and then of course, the newest one was the uncrewed aircraft systems operators. So if you involved with UAS somehow, we want you involved as well, because we want to share the airspace. We want to work together. We don't really like that segmented part of it. And I want our operators, my preaching has been, and we have some great operators out in California that operate helicopters to the hospitals, and now they operate drones for movement of organs as well. I mean, movement of organs is something
that's huge. That's a huge one. And there's operations that do literally, thousands of those a year of those movements.
Absolutely. So yeah, take advantage of the proper economic value of what you're going to use it for. I mean, I always like to go to the agriculture, and you mentioned it earlier. Ag aviation has celebrated over 100 years. And the helicopter part of that is when they go out and what are we going to do for the agriculture? Does it need an airplane? Does it need a helicopter? Does it need a drone? What's the proper size of the field? And let's use the proper tool.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges for the industry overall, not just helicopters, but for aviation and aerospace, is being environmentally accepted and environmentally friendly. And I know that a lot of effort is being made in the area of sustainability. I heard through the grapevine that actually from you guys directly, I shouldn't make it so dramatic. But anyhow, I heard that you guys are doing some new things in that area and some forward-thinking things. I wondered if you wanted to touch base about that.
Yeah, I certainly, number one, I want to give an attaboy to all the manufacturers out there that have been working on this issue for more than 5 to 10 years. And you don't get a lot, it doesn't really get into the news. I mean, how many people have heard about how many miles per gallon a helicopter is getting? You're not hearing it. But let me tell you, the manufacturers have been working on it. They're getting more effective engines. You know, you look at the engine manufacturers out there, they're trying to be as efficient as possible. If it's a multi-engine helicopter, when can one engine go to idle until you need the power to pull on board? This is my job to tell you this information. Hopefully, again, the audience is outside that are saying these vertical aviation vehicles of the future are trying to be as efficient as possible for sustainability reasons. And then we're looking at all the different types of fuel. Well, one of those fuels for jet engines is a sustainable aviation fuel. And so with that sustainable aviation fuel, you know, we're into the cost of it, the cost of moving it across the country, where can it be? Well, this year, our show is in California, and we know how important, you know, California as a leader in some of these areas are. And so this year, HAI has been involved in purchasing SAF fuel so that all the aircraft that are involved in HAI flying in and out of the convention can have the availability, will use SAF. And so I think that's a big win for our industry. I'm not sure if any other conventions have done that to date. I'm pretty sure not, because of some of the ways of doing it, and because number one, the cost, number two, transportation, and just the infrastructure is not all there. But the more they use it, like right now, the airlines are probably using the most of it. But we want to put our foot forward, and HAI is kind of putting the money where our mouth is, and we're purchasing the fuel, sustainability fuel for Heli-Expo 2024.
Awesome. Bailey, did you or Greg have anything to add to that?
Just to say that, you know, SAF is incredibly valuable to have, because of the ability of it is to essentially suck carbon out of the supply chain. It's made from organic materials, captured carbon dioxide, animal byproducts and stuff like that. So it's incredibly valuable, not just for use but for the entire aviation industry to embrace it as something that can help the entire country and the entire world meet our carbon neutral goals.
Yeah.
You know, HIA understands the importance of the carbon, what's going on there. So we, you know, taking the steps with Jim's leadership in making sure that we are showing that we're leaders in that, and we're putting foot forward in that. So, you know, we can't ask everybody else to do it, and until, you know, we have set foot and said, yes, we think it's important. And Jim has done a great job in putting it forward to say, here's how we are leading in this endeavor to make sure we do that. And especially the state, with California being in leader in wanting to get this emissions under control, to have that the SAF fuel available, I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's hard to believe we've been talking almost an hour, but as they say, time flies, and I say pun intended. As we kind of wrap things up, is there anything else, and I'd like each of you to chime in on this, that you'd like to say about the upcoming Heli-Expo in Anaheim, and what we may have missed, or just reemphasizing some things about it in terms of attending it?
Well, certainly, you know, I'll start off with, and I'd like Bailey to talk about, you know, any surprises that are, you know, be there on Monday night. But super excited because we did celebrate 75 years. And so as we're trying to, you know, set the foundation for the next 75 years, we've got some great things in store. So other than coming and connecting with your friends, you know, and just seeing all the good, you know, you've really got to look at the schedule, get in on the website of rotary.org, and look at Heli-Expo and look at all the different classes, because now's the time to get in and sign up for some of those that could start as early as Friday. And it's too late if you show up the show and then try to catch some other ones. But there's some really good ones there that you might be able to get some educational credit, or get your boss to approve your travel, because you can pick out something that he will benefit from you attending. So I challenge the audience to do that. Over to you, Bailey.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. One of the things that he said that I kind of want to grab onto, you spoke earlier about the 75th anniversary of the organization and how important that we're going to be celebrating that when we're also in Anaheim. But also, he mentioned how our industry keeps evolving. We were talking about air taxis earlier and UAS and things like that. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about. HAI is going through an interesting transformation at this time. And we're looking to expand who we are. And you talked about our membership. Our membership has changed in comparison to what they were looking at 75 years ago. Vertical aircraft are so much more and are becoming far more ubiquitous in today's society. So we're going to have some big announcements coming up, particularly at the welcome reception, which is Monday night, February 26th. We strongly encourage everybody to be there for some really exciting news about the future of HAI and the vertical aviation industry.
Yeah. Greg?
I would encourage you to come to Heli-Expo. The classes, as Jim mentioned, lots of professional education, rotor safety challenge, the MTBs, the career fair. Again, come network, learn. It's a very, very, very important aspect of it. So don't give that up to do that. And lastly, I think just the overall experience of the show and what you can get out of it. And workforce development, we're going to have the workforce development meeting on Wednesday, the 28th of show day at 10 o'clock. And you can find where the room is and to talk about a little bit workforce development, to come hear what's happening and the things that we're planning and looking at doing. So HAI is going to be a leader in this area as it relates to the vertical lift industry. Encourage you to come be a part of it. But again, education, heliexpo.com/education to find all the courses. And as Jim said, sign up and attend. And best of all, you get a chance to come and meet me. So come on out to Heli-Expo.
You go, Marine Corps pilot. I was thinking about a couple of things. One of the things that Jim mentioned that I'd like to reemphasize or place a little bit more emphasis on is kind of planning ahead. It is a big show. It can be, even for us in the industry, even for us who have a lot of experience in the industry, it can be overwhelming because there's just so many choices. So if you do what Jim and Greg just said and take a look on the website rotor.org and look up, and I think you also have
Heliexpo.com. Yeah.
Heliexpo.com. But if you go to either one of those and look up the show and go to the program schedule and the daily schedule and things like that, and just take an overall look, it'll give you a really good idea of some of the things that you can kind of focus in on that may be of interest to you. I have found, particularly with young people that I've seen come to this show and other similar types of shows, that if they don't do that, they come in and they're overwhelmed. It's like a fire hose of information coming at them. But if they actually so if you're thinking about the flying side, or if you're thinking about being a mechanic or whatever, then those are things that you'll want to kind of focus in on. And yes, you can look at everything there, but I'm just saying, if you categorize it, it'll make it a lot easier, make life easier for you to really get a lot out of the show and enjoy it. Gentlemen, it has been really great to have you. I was like, okay, we're going to talk about Heli-Expo. Maybe we'll do 50 minutes to an hour, and here we are right at an hour, and we probably could have continued on. But I'm really excited about it. It's, to me, Anaheim is kind of the original home. You've had a lot of shows there of the Heli-Expo, so looking forward to that. Looking forward to the California weather, but then I'm always looking forward to the California weather. But I think it's going to be a great show, and I think you're going to have a robust turnout. And there's just a lot of great things that'll be going on, and people will learn a lot about all of the things that we've been talking about. So I can't thank you guys enough. Any closing words, Jim, before we wrap up?
Well, like I said, interesting. I go to rotor.org, and there is a HA or Heli-Expo as well, but rotor.org, because the other message that I like to put out is we're more than the show. We are a full-up association. And so by going to rotor.org, you'll see all the stuff we do, the advocacy work we do, the safety work we do, and the education work we do. And we do and love Heli-Expo, no doubt. because that's our homecoming. So if you're a rotor head, you need to be at Heli-Expo, and this year it's at Anaheim. So see you there.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with some of these terms, rotorhead is actually a compliment. So anyhow, guys, thank you very much for taking the time to get together and tell us about the show. Look forward to seeing you guys out there. Wow, this was a really great and exciting show about something else great happening in our industry, which I can't overemphasize how exciting this industry is and how much opportunity there is right now for anybody that's interested, again, in any aspect of it. I'd like to thank you for joining All Things Aviation and Aerospace. It is a presentation of the Private Air Media Group. It is an aviation career-oriented show designed specifically to inform, inspire, and encourage aspiring young aviation professionals so that they'll have an opportunity at an exciting and rewarding aviation to have an exciting, rewarding aviation or aerospace career. If you happen to have missed this live stream or want to watch and hear the episode again, it will be available on demand on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as well as the audio-only podcast version on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, safe flying if you're a pilot like me. Take care and have a good one. Stay safe, everybody.